What is going on today, YouTube? Hope you guys are doing fantastic. Today's video, we are explaining every god in Smite 2 in a minute or less for some. All I ask is that you please subscribe if you like this type of content so I can keep making stuff like this. Anhur is a physical damage dealing auto attack hunter who builds strength. He plays mostly in carry role. We've seen him sometimes in mid and sometimes in support, depending on kind of like the meta. Anhur passive. Upon dealing damage, Anhur reduces protections of the enemy. 79, 86, 94. Anhur 1 is a wall that slows the enemies, and it also increases its auto attack damage in the area onto enemies or objectives. Anhur 2 is a line ability that does damage. This ability knocks back enemies, and if it knocks back enemies into any wall, a Ymir wall, an Anhur wall, a wall of the map, it stuns them also. Anhur's 3 is a jump that knocks enemies away. Anhur ultimate is a channeled ability that does damage 6 times, with the 6th proc doing almost twice as much damage. Anubis is a magical ability based mid lane god. He builds intelligence, and for the most part, all of Anubis has been played in mid lane. Anubis passive is the lower in health he gets, the more protections and the more lifesteal he gets. Anubis 1 is a giant cone ability that does multiple tick damages that you can walk in. Anubis 2 is a line ability that stuns one single enemy and does damage. Anubis 3 is a circle ability that you can place that slows enemies. Anubis ultimate is a line ability that roots him in place that has burst damage at the beginning of the ultimate. Ares is a magical melee tank support. His abilities both scale with intelligence and strength. He's mostly been played in support, with sometimes popping up in jungle and solo lane. Ares passive. By building protections and cooldowns, Ares gives intelligence and strength to allies and himself in an aura. Ares' first ability is a line ability that does tick damage. If the enemy breaks distance, the damage stops. However, Ares also can have multiple chains if he hits chains. So if he hits it, he has another one, hits it, he gets another one, hits it, and gets another one, up to 3. Ares' second ability is an aura that gives magical and physical protections and basic attack damage to teammates and himself. Ares' third ability is a cone ability that does tick damage. Ares' ultimate ability is an AoE that grabs onto enemies and pulls them to you, doing 2 instances of damage, 1 at the beginning and 1 at the pull. Athena is a magical melee tank support. She can build both intelligence and strength, and she has been played in every single role except carry. Athena passive is reach. After an ability, you get a ranged auto attack. Athena's first ability, after a short charge up, she gets a dash. Athena's second ability is a taunt in a cone around you that does damage and pulls enemies slowly towards you. Athena's third ability is an area of effect ability that does damage once on the initial hit and then a second hit after, and the second hit does more damage than the first hit. Athena's ultimate allows her, after a short channel, teleport to an enemy god, also giving them a shield. Bacchus is a magical melee tank support. He can build both intelligence and strength. He is mostly a support, but he can sometimes be seen in solo lane. Bacchus' passive is the drunkometer. The more tipsy he gets, the more drunk he gets, the more strength, intelligence, and protections he gets. Bacchus' first ability fills his drunkometer, and the first auto after taking a drink does extra damage. Bacchus' second ability is a jump that knocks up enemies. Bacchus' third ability anti-heals, and if you are drunk enough, you will stun the enemy after the entire duration. Bacchus' ultimate is an AoE around you that does damage to the enemies and intoxicates them. Bellona is a physical melee tank solo laner. She only gets value from building strength. She's mostly been seen in solo lane, but she's popped up in jungle every now and then. Bellona passive is she gets movement speed after auto attacks. She also gets additional value depending on the stance that she is in. Bellona's first ability is a dash that brings her into a sword and steeled stance. Auto attacks give her movement speed, and they also give her protections. Bellona's second ability is a AoE around you into a line ability in front of you, damage dealing ability. It also brings you into hammer stance, which gives you stacks of strength the more you auto attack. Bellona's third ability is a line ability that disarms the enemy, not allowing them to auto attack, also bringing you into Scourge stance, which gives you stacks of attack speed for auto attacking. Bellona's final ability is a leap that does damage and stuns enemies in the circle, also giving her strength, intelligence, and protections in the AoE along with allies. Cernnunos is a physical ranged auto attacker. He can build both strength and intelligence. Cern is only played in carry. Cern's passive has him do extra auto damage in melee range. Cern's first ability changes the stance that he is in. The green stance grants Cern lifesteal on auto attacks. The yellow stance grants him additional damage on auto attacks. The orange stance shreds protections of the enemy. And the blue stance slows enemy on auto attacks. Cern's second ability is a line ability that after hitting an enemy explodes, rooting them and doing damage around them. Cernnunos' third ability is a dash. You can cancel this ability early. Cernnunos' last ability is an AoE that after a short delay polymorphs the enemy, not allowing them to use abilities, autos, only allowing them to move. Chaac is a physical melee ability-based tank. Chaac can build both intelligence and strength. He is mostly played in solo lane, but he has seen some play in jungle. Chaac's passive is after 5 autos, his next ability costs no mana and slightly reduces the cooldown of that ability. After casting the ability, you also will heal a small amount. Chaac's first ability is an AoE ranged ability that does damage. If you press it again, you can cancel this ability early. Chaac's second ability is an AoE around you that grants you protections based on how many enemies you hit. Chaac's third ability heals you and slows enemies and reduces their auto attack speed around them. You can combo both Chaac's 2 and 3 off of his 1, allowing you to teleport or have a bigger rain area. Chaac's ultimate has him jump into the air, take reduced damage, and land silencing and knocking up enemies. Fenrir is a physical melee ability-based assassin. Fenrir builds strength, and he's mostly played in jungle, but he has seen some play in solo and support. Fenrir passive is runes. The more you stack up these runes, the more value you get on your abilities. Fenrir's first ability is a leap, and it does damage. If your runes are fully stacked, it also stuns the enemy. Fenrir's second ability empowers himself and gives him attack speed, strength, and lifesteal. If Fenrir runes are full, he also grants lifesteal to allies around him. Fenrir's third ability is a dash, and in this dash, it does a channeled amount of damage following enemies wherever they go unless they jump. At full runes, this also does increased damage. Fenrir's last ability transforms them, and his next auto attack allows him to pick up enemies and bring them wherever for a short amount of time. Hades is a ranged magical ability-based god. Hades builds only intelligence and can play both mid and solo lane. When Hades hits enemies with abilities or auto attacks, they become blighted, reducing their strength and intelligence. While blighted, Hades' abilities also have extra effects. Hades' first ability is a dash that does damage. If the enemies are blighted, they are also slowed. Hades' second ability is a silence and a cone. If they are blighted, they are instead feared. Hades' third ability is damage around him. If enemies are blighted, they also explode with damage around them. Hades' ultimate ability grants him CC immunity and also ticks damage onto enemies. They are also pulled to Hades during this entire duration. During ultimate, Hades can also dash one time to reposition in his ultimate. Hecate is a ranged magical ability-based god. She only builds intelligence, and she's mostly been played in mid, but there is some potential for her in solo or support. Hecate passive allows her to interact with either a structure or an allied god. If she interacts with a structure, that structure in that area grants increased mana and health regeneration to her and allies. If Hecate chooses to interact with a god, it has to be after they get a kill within 30 seconds. If she interacts with that god, both her and that god get increased strength and intelligence. Hecate's first ability is a line ability. She has 2 stances with just this one ability, and the first one does damage in a line, and the next ability from an allied god that also hits them makes them do another source of damage. The second one is a mesmerize on top of the damage. Hecate's second ability fires an orb into the sky. An ability used by enemies and Hecate in this area will make this ability do more damage that you're allowed to place in an area of effect afterwards. Hecate's third ability is a shield that only shields against magical damage, and this can go on either allies or herself. As soon as she places this on herself or an ally, it also does damage in that area. Hecate's ultimate summons a giant portal in front of her and at her feet. If it hits an enemy in that portal out there, it teleports them back to Hecate. And if they're in the closest one, they will be teleported away. After this, allies and Hecate will be able to use this as a teleport. Jing Wei is a ranged physical auto attack based god. She only builds strength and she is played in the duo lane as a carry. Jing Wei passive allows her to fly out of base to whatever lane she chooses. Jing Wei's first ability is 2 circles. The outer circle grants her increased attack speed, and the inner circle is a knockup. Jing Wei's second ability buffs up her auto attacks to explode in an AoE around where it hits. With these autos, she also gets increased crit chance. Additionally, she can have up to 9 autos with this explosive bolt at a time. Jing Wei's third ability is a dash. With this dash, she can use it while knocked up. Jing Wei's ultimate ability allows her to fly into the sky, doing damage in front of her. She can land where she chooses. If Jing Wei opts not to land, she can then go out and fly back. However, she cannot choose that second area. It has to be front and back right where she went. Kukulkan is a ranged magical ability based god. Kukulkan is a mid laner who builds intelligence items. Kukulkan passive grants him intelligence based on mana from items. Kukulkan's first ability is a line ability that explodes when it reaches an enemy. Kukulkan's second ability grants him movement speed. Kukulkan's third ability is a AoE ability that does damage ticking as you're in it, and then when you leave for also another second. If Kukulkan is in his 3 and uses his 2, he gets a quick dash that also does damage. Kukulkan's ultimate ability is a slightly delayed line ability that does lots of burst damage and knocks up. Loki is a melee physical ability based god. He builds strength and he is mostly played in the jungle. Loki's passive allows him to do extra damage behind enemies. Loki's first ability makes him go invisible, and his next auto attack does tick damage on top of the base damage. Loki's second ability is an AoE tick damage. Enemies who take damage from the ticks do reduced damage, and after the third tick of damage, they become blind. Loki's third ability is a small cone that does multiple sources of damage and finishes with one big one. Loki's ultimate teleports him a certain distance and allows him to cripple and then stun enemies. Loki does not have to hit a god with this, and it can just be used like a blink. Mordred is a melee physical ability based god. He scales with both intelligence and strength, and right now he plays solo and jungle. Mordred has 2 passives. His first passive gives him a dash on his interact key. The second part of Mordred's passive is gain Stack of Wrath for doing damage against an enemy with abilities and autos, evolving his ultimate from the first base ultimate into a supercharged ultimate. Mordred's first ability is a cone and then a small line attack ability, 2-hit ability. If Mordred is in his first or fourth auto attack, it will do extra damage. If he is in his second auto attack, it will heal. Mordred's second ability does an AoE damage around him, giving him attack speed and also allowing his auto attacks to shred enemy protections, granting them to himself. Mordred's third ability is a line attack with 2 lines. The first interior small line slows enemies and bleeds them, and the outer one just slows. The interior line bleeds the enemy only if they move. Mordred's base ultimate roots enemies in front of them, giving him a shield and also stealing health from them. Mordred's supercharged ultimate ability makes him CC immune and allowed to dash through walls. If he hits an enemy, he brings them into a combo ability that brings them into the air and slams them on the ground. Neith is a ranged physical ability based god, but she can also be an auto attack based god. She can build both strength and intelligence, and she can play both carry and mid lane. Neith's abilities either create or destroy weaves. Her first ability is a line ability that roots. Her second ability is an AoE that heals her and creates a weave on the ground. Her 1, if she hits a weave, explodes the weave and also roots people in that area. This also does additional damage. Neith's third ability does a giant cone of damage in front of her and also flips her backwards. Neith's third ability also detonates weaves, rooting and doing extra damage. Neith's ultimate is after a short charge, she shoots an enemy that she has vision of. This does damage and stuns. Odin is a melee physical ability based god. He scales with both int and strength, and he can play solo, jungle, and support. Whenever anyone dies on the map, ally or enemy, Odin grants movement speed, strength, and intelligence to himself. Odin's first ability, he jumps forward doing damage to enemies in a circle. Odin's second ability grants a shield to himself. After a few seconds, it explodes. You can also pop it early. Odin's first and second ability can combo together to do extra damage. Odin's third ability, ticks does damage and slows around him. If he throws it early, he grants attack speed to himself and allies. If he holds on to it for a second tick, the next throw forward will stun instead of granting attack speed. Odin's ultimate spawns spears that form a cage around enemies. Enemies cannot leave the cage without jumping or destroying part of the cage. If they leave the area without destroying it, they will take damage and become slowed. Enemies can also not heal in the area, and they have reduced strength and intelligence. Soul is a ranged, magical ability or auto attack based god. She scales with both intelligence and strength, and she can play ADC or mid. Soul's auto attacks and abilities slowly ramp up her passive, gaining her extra strength and intelligence, and then when it's fully capped out, her auto attacks will do more damage. Soul's first ability does tick damage and heals her based on her missing health. The more her passive is up, the bigger the area is. Soul's second ability makes her second auto attack become an ability that explodes 2 times in front of her. Soul's third ability grants her movement speed and leaves a trail behind her that does a little bit of damage. After the duration, the trail explodes, doing more damage and brings her into a damage immune state. Soul's ultimate drops 8 procs of damage from the sky, knocking up enemies 1 time and doing reduced damage after the first hit. Susano is a melee physical ability based god. He is a jungler who scales with strength. Susano's auto attacks have effects on enemy gods. The first 2 auto attacks reduce the enemy's strength. After the 4th auto attack, you slow them, and after your 6th auto attack, they take 10% increased damage. Susano's 1 is a 3-hit ability. The first damage does a small cone in front of you. If you cast it again, the second damage will be an AoE around you, and the third damage, you will dash forward, doing damage to enemies. Susano's second ability does damage in a cone. In the middle portion of the cone, you pull enemies towards you. On the outside of the cone, you just do damage to the enemy. Susano's third ability is a line ability that will follow the first god or minion or enemy it hits. You can proc it again to teleport to the enemy. Susano's ultimate spawns an AoE tick damage in front of you. After a while, it knocks up. You can cancel this early to get the knock up and reduced damage. Thanatos is a melee physical ability based god. He is a jungler and he builds strength. Thanatos' passive gives him a lot of stuff. He is able to see enemies anywhere on the map when they are low health. When he kills enemy gods, his base cooldowns get reduced in cooldown. When you kill an enemy god, you also heal. And instead of using mana, his abilities use health. Thanatos' first ability is a line ability that does damage and slows. Thanatos' second ability gives him movement speed and penetration, and it gets increased movement speed based on the enemy's health. Thanatos' third ability is a cone in front of him that silences and does damage. Thanatos' ultimate, after a short duration, CC immunes himself into the air, allows him to fly around. If he lands on an enemy god, he stuns them and does damage. If the enemy is below the execute threshold, instead it will execute them. The Morrigan is a ranged, magical, ability-based god. She builds intelligence and she is a mid laner. The Morrigan's third basic attack explodes in an AoE and does % max health damage. The Morrigan's first ability spawns decoys on the side and stuns and does damage to enemies in the triangle. The Morrigan's second ability is a line ability that does damage. If hit by another ability again from her or anyone on her team, it does another source of damage. The Morrigan's third ability spawns a decoy of herself in any direction and makes her invisible. The Morrigan's ultimate allows her to transform into any god in the match. You will then be able to use all of their abilities for a short duration before transforming back into the Morrigan. Ymir is a melee, magical, damage-based tank. Ymir scales with intelligence, and he is a support. Ymir's abilities apply frostbite to the enemy, making them take more damage from your autos, and they also deal less damage to you. Ymir's first ability is a wall. If he spawns the wall at his feet, it will rocket jump him forward. Ymir's second ability is a line ability that does damage in front of him and slows. Ymir's third ability is a cone that stuns enemies in front of him and does damage. Ymir's ultimate is a charged AoE around him, where the longer he charges it, the more damage it does. Zeus autos apply lightning to the enemy. The more lightning on an enemy increases your auto attack damage on them. First ability is a line ability that jumps to enemies that are close to them. Zeus' second ability does damage around him, procs a charge on the enemy, increases his attack speed, and also increases his movement speed. Zeus' third ability does nothing unless he has stacks of these lightning charges around the enemy. The more stacks they have, the more damage his 3 does. If there's 3 stacks on the enemy, it also stuns but does not remove the charges. Zeus' ultimate is an AoE that does damage over a long duration and also adds stack of lightning to the enemy.